So Jesus came here with his disciples, and this was also the site, the traditional site of the Sermon on the Mount. The Beatitudes, of course, are the opening section of those three chapters in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And what I mentioned last devotion was that Matthew put this gospel together not just as a collection of stories and events in chronological order, but with great intention as to the sequence of things. And so, as Manny mentioned, the teachings of Jesus in this three chapters of a sermon totally flipped upside down the expectations of what blessing and obedience meant. And he took the laws that had been handed down through the rabbinical tradition, as well as what were written in the Torah and in the prophets, and he, in some ways, intensified them. Um, you know, uh, Talking about the consequences of some of our sinful actions, talking about the implications as far as some of the decisions that we could make in life. But he also takes expectations like what it means to be blessed or joyful or good, and he flips those over as well, because as we know, the victory of Christ is not just over the conflicts that arise in this life or the problems that face us in our own walks each day, but ultimately it means universal and eternal victory over the evil one, over death itself. And so that's the context of what we're going to do here. What I want you to do, what I hope you do, is after these few minutes together, I'll read the Beatitudes to you. I'll talk just a brief piece about them, but then my hope would be that we can spread out around the grounds here and just take some time to read through Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. If you want to go for the whole thing, read through the Beatitudes a few times as well would be a beautiful reflection. And so let me just share these 12 verses with you. Seeing the crowds, Jesus went up on the mountain, this mountain. When he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and he taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." We have this legacy throughout the Gospels of Jesus being rejected, ignored, and pushed back against by those very same ones he came to save. And we shouldn't be shocked by this if we're familiar with the Bible, because this is indeed how the prophets were treated. This is indeed how the leaders God established were treated by the people that were called to follow them. And as we read through the gospel, that same theme in the Gospel of Matthew particularly is drawn out and eventually leads to Jesus' own death on the cross. But what's interesting is that I believe the Spirit opens our eyes to the truths found in these passages that are so counterintuitive to the expectations this world instills in us for our lives, where wealth is a signifier of intelligence, and blessing and health is a signifier that God is smiling on you, and good things happening in your life help make you feel like you're doing a lot right. And when we encounter suffering or illness or financial disaster, or we see others, sometimes we cast judgment upon them. So I just want to invite you to think about these. Just want to real quickly introduce you to a friend of mine named Diane. She's a member of my church down in Scottsdale. And Diane is simultaneously one of the most tortured people I know and one of the most joyful people I know. She would never lay all this out for you unless she had the chance to do so contextually, but she is someone who has lost her husband a number of years ago before I met her. She's lost a son. We walked through that together. Just 3 days ago, she lost a nephew to an illness that was incurable. She's faced numerous health challenges. She's had successful surgeries and unsuccessful surgeries. Her body, she's faced cancer a number of times. Her body is extremely taxed, extremely exhausted. She can't sleep through the night. She rarely makes public appearances. She can't make it to church on Sundays. And so by all accounts on earth, you have this woman who is the opposite of blessed. Some might even say she's cursed. She's afflicted. She's pained. And then you talk to her. You look in her eyes. She gives you a hug. And even though it might be awkward with the colostomy bag, what you experience is joy and warmth. What you experience is blessing. What you experience is someone who looks as if and acts and speaks as if she has inherited all the riches that the world has to offer. Someone who knows God as intimately as a loved child knows their loving parent. Someone who has seen the glory of God, and even in the valleys and depths of this life is guided by that light, as opposed to questioning angrily and shouting. And it's not that she doesn't encounter those emotions. She certainly knows God's big enough to handle them. But she's always brought back to that sweet reality that our hope is not that this life would be one where we transcend suffering, but instead, even in the midst of this suffering, God has a miraculous way of redeeming these things for the good use of his kingdom. So I want to invite you to take some time to read through some of these passages. Maybe if we'd like, I can just read them out loud. If anybody wants to hear that as opposed to reading it on the page, I'll just maybe stick around in this corner and read them. But before we do that, if you would pray with me the Lord's Prayer, which also we're taught in this discourse. This is the place where it first made its appearance. And I just remember as we pray the legacy that foundational invitation into conversation with God continues to have and will continue to have until we're brought home with him. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and